Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into the entire life of Aegon II Targaryen, but before I begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. Also known as Aegon the Elder, he was the sixth Targaryen king to sit the Iron Throne, succeeding his father Viserys I as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. His ascent was disputed by his older half-sister, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, who had been their father's designated heir. Aegon and Rhaenyra fought for the throne in the civil war singers called the Dance of the Dragons, in which both siblings perished. Aegon was married to his younger sister, Helaena, and had 3 children by her, though none reached adulthood. His dragon was Sunfire, also known as the Golden, during the dance. Aegon took a 3-headed golden dragon for his personal sigil instead of the red 3-headed Targaryen dragon, indicating his mount. Aegon's supporters used his personal heraldry as their battle flag. According to a semi-canon source, Aegon strongly resembled his father Viserys Targaryen in appearance. He was a handsome young man, though he had a sullen look in his eyes and a pouty mouth. Aegon had a wispy mustache instead of a beard. Overall, he did not look like a warrior. He wore the iron and ruby crown of Aegon I Targaryen and carried Blackfire, his namesake's Valyrian steel sword. Aegon Targaryen was born in 106 AC to King Viserys I and his second wife, Queen Alicent Hightower. He was the second child born of the royal couple, following the birth of his older sister Rhaenyra, who was officially named Viserys' heir in late 105 AC. This appointment marked Rhaenyra as the chosen successor to the Iron Throne, and it was a decision formalized by the pledges and oaths of hundreds of lords and knights who swore to defend her rights. Despite the presence of his older sister, Aegon was given his own significant place in the royal family, particularly when it came to matters of succession. Aegon was named after Aegon the Conqueror, a symbolic gesture reflecting the Targaryen family's proud heritage and ambition. He would go on to have 3 younger siblings, 2 brothers, Aemond and Daeron, and a sister, Helaena. Even with 3 sons to his name, King Viserys made the controversial decision not to alter the succession plan, and he chose to keep Rhaenyra as his heir. This decision, one that Viserys upheld in his final will, would have far-reaching consequences as the Targaryen family's internal strife and succession crisis unfolded in the years to come. The king's younger brother, Prince Daemon Targaryen, was notably displeased with Aegon's birth, as it further distanced him from the throne. Daemon had already been passed over for the crown in favor of his brother Viserys, and the arrival of more royal sons pushed him even further down the line of succession. His feelings towards Aegon and his younger brother Aemond were therefore cool, and he harbored a deep resentment for the growing number of potential heirs in the Targaryen line. Aegon's mother, Queen Alicent, was vehemently opposed to Viserys' decision to name Rhaenyra his heir. She believed that her son Aegon should have been the one to ascend the Iron Throne, and she often pressed her husband to reconsider. Alicent's father, Sir Otto Hightower, the King's Hand, shared the view and consistently urged King Viserys to name Aegon his heir. The persistent pressure from Otto and Alicent ultimately led to Sir Otto's dismissal from his position as Hand of the King, a move that further exacerbated the tension within the royal court. When it became clear that Viserys was unwilling to change his mind about Rhaenyra's succession, Alicent attempted another strategy to secure the throne for Aegon. She proposed that Rhaenyra and Aegon marry, uniting the 2 branches of the Targaryen family, and ensuring Aegon's eventual ascension. However, Viserys rejected this idea, not only because Rhaenyra and Aegon were a decade apart in age, but also because the 2 siblings had never shared a particularly close relationship. The king was aware that Alicent's proposal was driven more by her desire to see Aegon on the throne than any genuine affection for Rhaenyra's well-being. Instead, Viserys arranged for Rhaenyra to marry Sir Laenor Velaryon, the heir to the powerful House Velaryon and ruler of Driftmark, a political match that further complicated the delicate balance of power among the Targaryen family in the kingdom. Aegon's early years were marked by the heavy weight of his royal lineage and the intense, often divisive politics of the Targaryen court. Though he was a prince with a claim to the throne, his path to power was uncertain, fraught with familial tension and overshadowed by the legacy of his older sister Rhaenyra and the ongoing struggle for control of the Iron Throne. As time passed, tensions within the court of Viserys Targaryen grew increasingly palpable. The division between the supporters of Queen Alicent and those backing Princess Rhaenyra became more pronounced, with both factions vying for power and influence. The core of the conflict revolved around the question of succession to the Iron Throne, which was steeped in bitter debate. At the heart of this dispute were the laws established at the Great Council of 101 AC, which had ruled that a woman should not inherit the Iron Throne. This decision ignited a fierce loyalty among the lords who saw Aegon, the eldest son of Alicent, as the rightful heir. In contrast, Rhaenyra's supporters, who were loyal to her claim, dismissed this notion and rallied behind her as the true successor. Over time, the two factions began to be referred to as the Greens and the Blacks, with the Greens supporting Aegon's claim and the Blacks backing Rhaenyra. The animosity between Queen Alicent and Princess Rhaenyra was not just a political issue, it was personal. Their bitter rivalry steeped into relationships between their children, creating a rift that would last for generations. Aegon and his brothers, raised under Alicent's influence, harbored intense resentment towards Rhaenyra's children, particularly her three sons by Sir Harwin Strong. Aegon believed that Rhaenyra's sons were not the legitimate children of her late husband, Sir Laenor Velaryon, but they were in fact fathered by Harwin, whom many at court suspected of having an affair with the princess. This belief only fueled Aegon's animosity towards Rhaenyra and her children, feeling that they had stolen his birthright, the Iron Throne itself. Despite their shared bloodline, the children of the two houses could not find common ground. The six boys, Aegon, Aemond, and their Valyrian cousins, attended the same feasts, balls, and revels. They often trained together under the same master-at-arms and studied under the same maesters. However, rather than fostering camaraderie, these shared experiences only heightened their mutual dislike. Archmaester Galdwin in his writings noted that the close proximity between Aegon and Rhaenyra's sons, rather than encouraging reconciliation, deepened the animosity between them, as they were constantly reminded of the stark divisions between their families. By the time Aegon turned 13, he had already bonded with the dragon, becoming a dragon rider like many Targaryens before him. His dragon Sunfire was a symbol of his status and power, strengthening his belief in his rightful place as the future ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. But as tensions shimmered between the two factions, personal slights continued to add fuel to the fire. One such incident occurred in 120 AC when Princess Rhaenyra, now married to her uncle Prince Daemon after the deaths of their respective spouses, gave birth to a son who she also named Aegon. The naming choice was a clear provocation towards Aegon, the true heir, a deliberate attempt to undermine his position. The news infuriated Queen Alicent, who saw it as yet another challenge to her son's birthright and a deeply personal insult. In 122 AC, in an effort to strengthen the bond between their families and secure the future of House Targaryen, Aegon the Elder married his sister, Princess Helaena Targaryen, in a union in King's Landing. This marriage followed the ancient Targaryen tradition, consolidating power within the royal family. A year later, their first children, twins Princes Jaehaerys and Princess Jaehaera, were born. However, Aegon's personal life was not without scandal. He fathered two bastards, one boy born to a girl he had won at an auction in the notorious Street of Silk, and another girl born to one of his mother's servants. His marriage to Helaena, although politically significant, could not erase the undercurrent of resentment and scandal that surrounded him. In 127 AC, Helaena gave birth to Aegon's youngest son, Prince Maelor. Despite the many attempts of King Viserys to reconcile his children and their respective factions, the deep-seated resentment between Aegon and Rhaenyra's children remained unshaken. King Viserys had hoped that his efforts to mend relations would ease the tensions within the royal family, but his efforts were in vain. At a feast on the first day of 127 AC, tensions boiled over when Prince Jaehaerys Velaryon, Rhaenyra's eldest son, asked Princess Helaena for a dance. The request set off a confrontation between Aegon and Jaehaerys, as Aegon took offense at the attention his sister was receiving from one of Rhaenyra's sons. Words were exchanged, and the situation nearly escalated into violence, only stopped by the timely intervention of the Kingsguard. This incident was yet another sign that the schism within the Targaryen family was beyond repair. The rift between the Greens and the Blacks had grown too wide, and despite King Viserys' hope for unity, the royal family's discord was only escalating. As the sons of Rhaenyra and Alicent grew older, the battle for the Iron Throne seemed increasingly inevitable. The personal vendettas of political struggles between them would shape the future of the realm, and the kingdom would soon be plunged into chaos as old wounds festered into a full-scale civil war. The death of King Viserys I Targaryen in 129 AC set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the destiny of the Targaryen dynasty. At the time of his passing, Viserys' chosen heir was still his daughter, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, who was pregnant and residing on Dragonstone. However, with Rhaenyra so far away and unaware of her father's death, The political faction supporting her rival, Queen Alicent Hightower, and her children, swiftly moved to conceal the news in order to prepare for Aegon's coronation. For 7 days, the Greens, those loyal to Alicent, hid in the king's death, keeping the body sealed in his chambers while they made preparations for the coronation. The small council, with the exception of Lord Lionel Beesbury, unanimously agreed that Aegon, Viserys' son by Alicent, should ascend the throne. However, when Aegon was summoned to the Green Council, he was nowhere to be found. The Kingsguard searched his quarters, only to find that the prince had been indulging in drunken revelry. According to the most salacious account, provided by the court jester Mushroom, Aegon had been at a rat pit in Flea Bottom, drunkenly cavorting with a young girl while watching children fight for sport. Other more restrained accounts, such as that of Septon Eustace, claimed that Aegon had been in bed with a well-placed paramour, the daughter of a wealthy trader. Regardless of the truth, Aegon was initially reluctant to take part in the coronation, claiming that Rhaenyra was the rightful heir. However, it was only after Sir Criston Cole, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, convinced Aegon that Rhaenyra's rule would likely result in the execution of him and his brothers, that he reluctantly agreed to the throne. The decision to crown Aegon II was not without controversy. Rhaenyra, having not yet received word of her father's death, did not immediately know the coup was unfolding in King's Landing. When Aegon's coronation was finally announced to the Seven Kingdoms on the 10th day of the third moon, his ascension was marked by a ceremony at the Dragon Pit, where the crown of Aegon the Conqueror was placed upon his head by Sir Criston Cole. The aged High Septon was absent, and so Septon Eustace performed the anointing and blessing, making Aegon the new King of the Andals, the Rhaenyar, and the First Men. However, while Aegon enjoyed the luxury and power of King's Landing, Rhaenyra refused to accept this usurper of her birthright. Sir Steffon Darklyn, a member of the Kingsguard loyal to Rhaenyra, managed to escape to Dragonstone with the crown of Viserys I, further cementing the rift between the two factions. The stage was set for civil war, as Rhaenyra crowned herself queen in opposition to Aegon's ascension. Although Aegon wielded the symbols of power, his father's crown, the Valyrian steel sword Blackfyre, and the Iron Throne, he now faced the full force of Rhaenyra's claim, backed by her strong support among House Velaryon, House Stark, and other prominent houses. Aegon, initially uncertain and filled with doubts about the legitimacy of his rule, became increasingly paranoid and vengeful as the political situation deteriorated. When Rhaenyra was crowned, Aegon demanded her execution as well as that of Prince Daemon Targaryen. However, after the intervention of Grand Maester Orwyle, Aegon relented and allowed peace terms to be sent to Rhaenyra, though she rejected them outright. With the realm divided, the civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons began. The early months of the war were marked by brutal events that deepened the divide between the two factions. Prince Aemon Targaryen, Aegon's brother, killed Prince Lucerys Velaryon, Rhaenyra's son, in a confrontation at Storm's End. The murder of Lucerys escalated tensions, and when Aemond returned to King's Landing, Aegon welcomed him with a grand feast to celebrate the victory. However, there were growing concerns among Alicent and Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, about the brutal nature of Aemond's actions. Seeking revenge, Prince Daemon Targaryen struck at Aegon's family in a devastating way. The prince's son, Prince Jaehaerys, was killed in a horrific event known as the Blood and Cheese Incident, orchestrated by Daemon's spymaster Mazaria. Jaehaerys' death caused profound grief in Queen Helaena, Aegon's wife, who quickly descended into madness, racking with guilt over her role in the tragedy. In his fury, Aegon ordered the execution of every ratcatcher in the city, blaming them for his son's death. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Aegon withdrew into a state of deep grief and anger, leading to a strained relationship with Helaena. They began sleeping apart, with Aegon often drowning his sorrows in strong wine. As the war raged on, Aegon grew more chaotic and unstable. While the Greens suffered a series of stepbacks in the Riverlands, Sir Otto Hightower sought to gain allies by sending letters and recruiting sellswords. However, Aegon grew frustrated with his grandfather's perceived inaction and saw his caution as cowardice. With much of the realm backing Rhaenyra, including House Velaryon and the most powerful northern houses, Aegon's fears mounted. He responded by stripping Sir Otto of the hardship of being Hand of the King and awarding it to Sir Criston Cole, who he trusted more. Sir Criston, eager to take the offensive, set the stage for further conflict. Aegon himself participated in a bloody battle at Roop's Rest, where he and Aemond fought alongside the Kingsguard to slay Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who had been a key supporter of Rhaenyra. However, the victory came at a high cost. Aegon's dragon Sunfire was severely injured, and Aegon himself was grievously wounded. His body was burned and broken, and he would spend the next year bedridden, suffering from excruciating pain. He was so consumed by the effects of his injuries that he was rendered incapacitated for much of the year, with his mind clouded by the milk of the poppy. During his long recovery, Aegon's mother and his brother Aemond assumed the roles of Prince Regent and Queen Regent respectively, and protector of the realm, ruling in his stead. Aegon's body remained twisted and scarred, and his physical and mental health deteriorated as he struggled with the burden of his crown. His reign, already fraught with conflict and division, would continue to be marked by tragedy and warfare, as the Dance of the Dragon spiraled ever deeper into chaos. In 130 AC, the tides of war shifted dramatically as Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen took control of King's Landing and ascended the Iron Throne. However, the battle for the throne was far from over. The conflict escalated when Aemon Targaryen and Daemon faced each other in the infamous Battle above the God's Eye, where both perished in a deadly clash. Meanwhile, Sir Criston Cole met his end in the brutal aftermath of the Butcher's Ball. Yet before Rhaenyra's forces could capture the remaining members of the Targaryen family, Aegon II and his children were secretly smuggled out of King's Landing. Larry Strong, the cunning Lord of Harrenhal, orchestrated the escape, ensuring Aegon and his children, Maelor and Jaehaera, were safely removed from the capital. While Maelor and Jaehaera were hidden away in safety, Aegon took a more clandestine approach. Disguised as a commoner, he fled on a fishing boat, eventually arriving on Dragonstone, the ancestral seat of House Targaryen. Upon reaching the island, Aegon made a bold move, convincing several of Rhaenyra's supporters, the Blacks, to defect and aid him in taking control of the island for his own. The battle for Dragonstone was fierce. Aegon and Princess Baela Targaryen, Rhaenyra's daughter, engaged in a deadly aerial duel atop their respective dragons, Sunfire and Moondancer. Both dragons plunged to the earth in the midst of the fight, with Aegon attempting to leap from his dragon's back in an effort to survive the fall. The attempt, however, resulted in the shattering of his legs. Despite the excruciating pain, Aegon refused and offered relief of milk of the poppy from Grand Maester Geraldes, recalling the horrors of his recovery from the Battle of Rook's Rest. Deeply mistrustful of Geraldes, Aegon ordered the maester to be fed to his dragon, though in a macabre display, the upper torso of the maester was left hanging from the battlements as a grim welcome for Rhaenyra. Aegon's journey to Dragonstone had been protected by Sir Marston Waters, a loyal knight. In recognition of Sir Marston's service, Aegon appointed him to his personal Kingsguard, solidifying the king's newfound status. Meanwhile, tragedy continued to plague Aegon's personal life. His wife, Queen Helaena Targaryen, overcome by grief, ended her life in the capital, and his son Prince Maelor was murdered by a mob in Bitterbridge. The war continued to rage on, even as Rhaenyra's forces were in disarray. After the storming of the Dragon Pit, Rhaenyra fled to Dragonstone, unaware that Aegon had already staged his coup. Upon her arrival, Rhaenyra was swiftly captured, declared a traitor, and executed in a brutal fashion. In a final cruel act, she was fed to Aegon's dragon Sunfire while her surviving son, Prince Aegon the Younger, was forced to watch. This act of cruelty did not go without dissent. Sir Alfred Broom, a member of Aegon's court, argued for the execution of the younger Aegon as well. However, Aegon forbade it, unwilling to further stain the honor of his rule with the death of a child. Though Rhaenyra was dead, her supporters, fiercely loyal to her cause, continued to rally behind her son, Aegon the Younger. Despite being Aegon the Elder's prisoner, the boy's supporters believed that his ascension to the throne was their last hope. The struggle for the throne was far from over. However, Aegon's return to King's Landing was hindered by his growing blockade. The Velaryon fleet, commanded by Rhaenyra's supporters, surrounded Dragonstone, preventing the newly crowned king from marching back to the capital. With Dragonstone secured and the Velaryon fleet in place, the war was poised to continue, and Aegon's control over the throne was far from assured. The battle lines were drawn, and the Dance of the Dragons continued to burn through the realm, with the future of the Iron Throne still hanging in the balance. Though Rhaenyra Targaryen had already met her end, the Dance of the Dragons, the devastating civil war between the Targaryen factions, was far from over. Aegon II, now firmly seated on the Iron Throne, still had many challenges to face, particularly with the forces arrayed against him. In an attempt to consolidate his power and bring House Velaryon back into the fold, Aegon offered a pardon to House Velaryon with the condition that Alan Velaryon, the heir to Lord Corlys, swear fealty to him and allow him to cross the Blackwater Bay. However, as tensions between the two sides remained high, Tragedy struck Aegon's own side. His dragon, Sunfire, succumbed to the wounds sustained during the war. The loss of Sunfire deeply affected Aegon, and he was seen weeping before his fallen mount. Though initially Aegon had ordered the execution of Princess Baela Targaryen, he instead threatened to execute her only if Alan Velaryon did not present himself before him. Eventually, Lord Boros Baratheon arrived in King's Landing, and Queen Alicent Hightower arranged a marriage between Aegon II and Lady Cassandra Baratheon, the eldest daughter of Lord Boros. Meanwhile, Lord Corlys Velaryon, after much negotiation, agreed to swear fealty to Aegon, securing the position of Master of Ships for himself. As Aegon prepared to execute Baela once more, news arrived that House Velaryon had made its peace with the Iron Throne, and Aegon returned to King's Landing aboard the ship called Mouse. The ship, captained by Alan Velaryon's mother, Marilda of Hull, was seen by many as an insult to Aegon, a subtle rebuke of his power. In the aftermath of the war, Aegon's physical condition continued to deteriorate. Unable to climb the steps of the Iron Throne, he held court from a simple wooden chair, his body draped in a blanket due to the pain of his twisted legs. Despite his agony, he refused to take any more of the dream wine or milk of the poppy to ease his suffering. Instead, his mind focused on the threats that remained within the realm. Among them were the 3 self-proclaimed pretender kings in King's Landing. Aegon allowed Tristan Truefire, one of the pretenders, to receive knighthood before executing him, while he spared Gaemon Palahair because of his youth, though Gaemon's followers were hanged. Aegon's wrath extended further than he had with the Shepherd, leader of a popular uprising, captured, his tongue ripped out, and the man burned alive along with his followers. Despite calls for Lord Corlys Velaryon for Aegon to pardon the lords who had supported Rhaenyra, the king refused. He insisted that the lords of the Crown Lands be brought before him in chains to swear fealty, pay heavy ransoms, and provide hostages as proof of their loyalty. His harsh measures alienated many. Meanwhile, forces from the Riverlands marched towards the capital, and an army of the Vale of Arryn was gathering ships to attack. Aegon's attempts to hatch dragon eggs from Dragonstone was unsuccessful, leaving him in despair. Even when Lord Corlys Velaryon suggested a marriage between his daughter and Aegon the Younger, the captive son of Rhaenyra, Aegon rejected the idea, insisting that the line of his sister Jaehaera Targaryen should not continue. Instead, Aegon decreed that his nephew would either join the Night's Watch or become a eunuch. As the situation around him grew increasingly dire, with armies closing in on the capital, Aegon II remained disconnected, focusing only on his impending marriage to Lady Cassandra of Baratheon. Meanwhile, he ordered the rebuilding of the Dragon Pit, and commissioned statues of his late brothers Daeron the Daring and Aemond One-Eye in their honor. However, with Lord Cormac Tully's army having defeated Boros Baratheon in the Battle of the Kingsroad, the tides were turning against Aegon. Lord Corlys Velaryon knew defeat was inevitable and urged the king to abdicate and seek refuge in the Night's Watch. Queen Alicent, however, reminded her son that there were still hostages, and Aegon refused to consider surrender. In an act of defiance, Aegon ordered the ear of his nephew Aegon the Younger to be cut off and sent to Lord Tully as a warning of his continued resistance. It was at this moment of looming defeat that Aegon II made his way to a royal sept. Seemingly resigned to his fate, the exhausted king climbed his litter, accompanied by his customary flagon of sweet arbor red wine to ease his pain. However, when his escort arrived at the sept and Sir Giles Belgrave lifted the curtains of his litter, Aegon was found dead, blood on his lips, his death marked by the end of the reign of Aegon II, a ruler whose legacy would be forever marred by the violence and cruelty of his reign. With Aegon's death, the stage was set for his nephew Aegon the Younger to ascend the throne. Along with Lord Corlys Velaryon, Aegon the Younger rode out to meet the vanguard of Cormac Tully's army, proclaiming the king's death. Meanwhile, Lord Leowyn Corbray, commander of the Vale's host, watched as the Velaryon fleet removed the banner of Aegon II, signaling the end of the king's rule. With no male heirs remaining, Aegon the Younger assumed the throne, marrying Aegon II's daughter, Princess Jaehaera Targaryen, and uniting the 2 branches of House Targaryen. As per Targaryen tradition, Aegon II co-signed to the flames. His remains were burned, and some hoped that the fire would purge the bitterness and hatred that had characterized his reign. However, the full truth behind Aegon's death remains shrouded in mystery. While many believe it was that he was poisoned, the identity of the perpetrator was never conclusively determined. Several individuals, including Lord Corlys Velaryon, Lord Larry Strong, and Sir Perkin the Flea, were suspected of involvement in the conspiracy to kill the king. These conspirators feared that Aegon's continued reign would lead to further war, and they took matters into their own hands. When Lord Cragen Stark arrived in King's Landing, he had the conspirators arrested. Grandmaster Orwyle was executed for providing the poison, while Sir Giles Belgrave was executed for allowing the king's death. 22 others, many of them under Perkin's command, were also executed, though Corlys Velaryon was spared after a plea by Alicent Blackwood. Larry Strong was executed, and Perkin was sent to the wall. In the wake of Aegon's death, construction of the statues of his brothers was halted, and the rebuilding of the Dragon Pit resumed, marking the final moments of Aegon's reign. So what did you guys think of Aegon Targaryen? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, link is in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.